Welcome back. Hopefully everyone enjoyed planning out travel plans for Anita and Cole in Module 3. It's a really big assignment, so hopefully you're feeling good about it. And frankly, those type of tasks have to happen all the time in our industry. If you're a photographer or a filmmaker, you will likely need to create shot lists for shoots. Especially if those shoots are on location, you will need to coordinate talent, grips, rigging, equipment, meals, the list goes on. If you are a print or a web designer, you may need to coordinate yourselves with illustrators and photographers and copywriters, maybe the marketing and legal teams. For those of you who are going to go on to be print designers, you'll need to coordinate with prepress and printers and perhaps even mailing and distribution services. If you're going to be a web designer, you will need to coordinate with developers and systems analysts, quality assurance testers, analytics teams, research teams, and vice versa for those of you who are going to be web developers or software engineers. So although you may never find yourself in the shoes of a wedding planner, I don't know, maybe you will. The idea for the labs and assignments in Module 2 weren't solely to teach you how to plan a wedding. The idea was to teach you how to manage a project where variables change, requirements are expected to be remembered, and the project's success really boils down to the rigor of your logic. Now, moving into Module 3, we're going to shift gears a little bit, but not too far. This module is gearing you up for a massive team project you're going to be doing in Module 4. That said, it is imperative that you are paying very close attention to timelines here. If you miss any single step, or if you're late on any lab or assignment, it is possible that you could fail the entire class. So, by this point, I hope you all have come to realize that this class is incredibly rigorous. There are right and wrong answers. This is also a really great time for me to remind all of you that if you have questions about anything, and I do mean anything, if the instructions are unclear, if a software is not working properly for you, if you are thinking something makes sense but you would just like to double check before you submit, please ask the question. I tell everyone at the beginning of the semester, I have one job here, and that is to answer your questions. I genuinely mean that. I will take time, morning, noon, and night, on weekends and weekdays to answer your questions. Granted, I'm usually in bed by 8:30 or 9 o'clock, so if you message me past then, I will likely respond the next morning. Anyway, today we're going to get started with Module 4. As you can tell by the slide, we are going to be going over what are called SMART goals today. So here's our agenda. We will be starting by talking about what SMART goals are, perhaps a little bit of a refresher for some of you who have done SMART goals before. Then we'll be going into what the SMART criteria is. How do you decide the right scope for your SMART goals? Then lastly, how to actually write SMART goals. And in case you didn't already figure it out, you're going to be writing SMART goals for your lab after this assignment, so just pay really close attention here. By the end of this lecture, you should be able to define SMART goal components, identify specific goal actions, measure success using data, assess goal achievability, and align goals with priorities, whether it's your priorities or maybe business priorities, academic priorities, etc. So let's first start by addressing what SMART goals are. SMART goals are designed in a way to foster clear and sort of a mutual understanding of what constitutes expected levels of performance and successful professional development. In short, UCLA describes SMART goals as statements of the important results you are working to accomplish. However, like most things in this industry, there is a specific criteria for how SMART goals ought to be written. Fun fact, SMART is actually an acronym. S stands for specific, M stands for measurable, A is achievable. Sometimes you might also hear A as actionable, so just keep an eye out for both variations there. R is relevant, and then T is time-bound. Now, that's all great, but what does all of that mean, right? There's a few questions that you can ask and answer for each section that can really help you write each goal. So, for specific, we can ask questions like, what will be accomplished? What actions will you take to accomplish it? The question, what will be accomplished, is generally the easiest one for most of you to answer. Maybe you want to graduate. Maybe you want to drink more water in your day, or go to the gym, or focus on your artwork more. Whatever those goals may be, if we enjoy the work we're doing, what you want to accomplish should hopefully come to mind naturally. The harder part of being specific is what actions you're going to take to achieve those goals. It's one thing to say you want to do something, but that means absolutely nothing to the person you're communicating with until you put fuel on that fire. So if you're wanting to graduate, those actions are essentially already spelled out for you. You are going to have to pass your class with a 70% or higher for most of you, and you're going to have to attend class, you're going to have to turn work in on time. I don't know, maybe do the work. You get the picture. If you're wanting to drink more water during the day, maybe you need to cut out coffee, soda, sports drinks, and then maybe replace those with water. Maybe you also buy a Hydro Flask or a Stanley Cup or one of those nice and trendy mugs, something that's really aesthetic and really makes you want to drink more water. Maybe you set reminders on your phone to drink 8 ounces of water each day. Really, whatever works for you. There's a number of different ways that you could go about it. If you are wanting to go to the gym, maybe you should start with buying a gym membership. Then maybe you should block off an hour each day on your Google Calendar and as time for you to go to the gym, right? It's kind of hard to go to the gym if you don't set out the time to go and do it. Maybe create a Notion board with all of your favorite workout routines so that you can always just pull them up and don't have to think of them in the moment. If you are wanting to focus on your artwork more, maybe you clear out a corner of your bedroom to set up an easel, or maybe you keep a camera in your car or backpack so you can take pictures of things that inspire you as you are sort of going throughout your day. All of these are really great examples of specific actions that you can take to set your goals into motion. For measurable, we can ask questions like, what data will that goal be measured by? How much data do we need in order to measure that goal? How well, or in other words, are you looking to hit a specific data point like 80% customer satisfaction or greater than 90% on-time submission rate? These tend to stump most students, I would say. So I want to spend a little bit of time here to talk about quantifiability, meaning that something is able to be expressed or measured as a quantity, a number. Again, I'll use the example of you trying to graduate. The measurable component in that scenario is pretty easy. As your professor, I give you a grade. That grade is a percentage, or in other terms, it is quantifiable. If you are getting 50 to 70% in your classes, you're probably not going to graduate. But if you're getting above a 70%, you're probably on track for graduation. Pretty easy, right? Well, that can get a little bit more complicated. So let's look at the other examples that I gave. For drinking more water, you should probably specify a volume of water you aim to drink based on your unique body mass and the recommended daily water intake for your unique body mass index. Then you can likely want to space that intake out evenly throughout the day. That way you don't feel like you have to guzzle 64 ounces of water the first thing in the morning when you wake up and get out of bed. With going to the gym, there's a bunch of measurements that you could focus on there. You could start with the number of days. Are you going to go 3 days per week? Are you going to go 5 days per week? Maybe all 7, right? Maybe it's also important to set a specific amount of time you're dedicating to working out each day. Are you going to spend 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours? Then you could focus on quantifiable training elements, like how many miles are you going to run? How many pounds are you going to lift? How many reps or cycles are you going to go through in each exercise, etc. Same thing with focusing on your artwork. Maybe you just need to set 30 minutes aside each day to work on it. Maybe you commit to posting 1 piece of artwork per day on Instagram or TikTok. I think you get the picture here. The important thing is that you outline what you will be measuring the success, or frankly, the failure of your goal based upon. Measurable objectives remove ambiguity and confusion. They provide a clear picture of what success looks like, creating a sense of direction and motivation on your own part. All right, for achievable or actionable, again, you may hear it both ways there, we can start to ask questions like, is the goal doable? In other words, do you maybe have the necessary skills or resources to complete the goal? What good is a goal if it is not achievable? That would be kind of like me saying that my goal is to be everyone's favorite teacher. Well, first, that's not very specific. Second, while that is in some degree measurable, that measurement would be very highly subjective and potentially biased even. But most importantly, it's not achievable. Everyone has a slightly different learning style, compounded by the fact that I tend to throw a lot at all of you. I understand that it's a lot of work, but I do it hopefully to make you all better creative professionals and engineers. All that to say that I would be essentially setting myself up for failure, and I would never be capable of being everyone's favorite teacher. Now, for you all, I'll try to go back to some of the examples that I set from before. If you are trying to graduate, this is where some subjectivity and maybe even a fair degree of uncertainty tends to enter the conversation. While you are the primary person responsible for your success here at ASU, that may not always be the case. Maybe you are sort of getting assigned to a group project, which you guys will have here in this class. Now, graduation in some ways strapped to the work, others contribute also. So this is a really great space to outline those variables that could potentially be outside of your control. What if you can't afford to pay tuition? What if you or a family member gets sick? All of these variables or sort of unplanned things are really viable questions that could change the answer to this question. So it's good to think about as many of those variables as possible to help mitigate the risk if one of those unlikely scenarios just so happens to come to fruition. If you're going to the gym, do you have the money for a gym membership? If you have a heart or breathing condition or maybe a previous injury, are there exercises that your doctor has approved for you to do? And do you have the available time in your day or your week or your month and maybe even your year to dedicate to going to the gym as consistently as you set out in your SMART goals? If you're trying to drink more water, and this one sounds a little bit silly, but it's still applicable, do you have a clean source of drinking water? Do you have something to put that water into? If you want to focus on your art, do you have the tools and skills necessary to do that type of art? Or are you just approaching it because you saw a TikTok video and wanted to give it a try? If the answer to these types of questions is no, your goal may not be achievable. in which case you might consider breaking out your goal into multiple smaller goals so that you can work towards achieving that goal in slightly smaller increments. Now, for relevant, this one we can ask questions like, how does the goal align with some of our broader goals? And why is this result important to us? Or maybe even our organization or our futures. Why do you want to graduate? Chances are it will help you get a job or a promotion, perhaps a higher paying role that will help you achieve some of your other goals. Maybe this is purely an intellectual journey for you. Tell me why the result of this goal is important to you and how it aligns with some of your other goals. If you're trying to go to the gym, how does that align with your broader goals? Are you trying to lose weight? Are you trying to gain muscle? Maybe just maintain a healthier lifestyle. Tell me how going to the gym connects to and will hopefully help you achieve your higher level goals. The reason that relevance is so important is so those around you can hold you accountable to the goals you set and can see the larger vision that you are trying to obtain as a reminder for what is at stake if your goals are not set. And lastly, for time bound, we can ask questions like, what is the time frame for accomplishing the goal? This one hopefully should be pretty easy. When do you want to complete your goal by, right? Sometimes that's a little bit harder, mainly because sometimes we don't know how long something will take, or we're just guessing. But yes, a specific date is really required here. Sometimes this can be as simple as setting something like 3 weeks or 6 months or 1 year. But personally, I prefer to set specific dates, with a specific day, a month, and a year on the calendar. Now, if your goal is something ongoing, like going to the gym or drinking more water or set up regular checkpoints so you can pause and assess your performance on that task. If you're meeting the goal, continue as normal. Or maybe set slightly more difficult parameters. That's actually a really good tool as well. If you feel like the goal is being achieved too easily, you can extend that goal or add more difficult parameters to it. If you're not meeting the goal, and this is really important, acknowledge that. Reassess the goal. Set a new one that is maybe a little bit more realistic or maybe a bit more specific and has better measurable data points or is more achievable or perhaps that's more closely related to your broader goals or has more strict and frequent time requirements. That way, breaking it down can help you achieve those goals a little bit better. Now, graduating, going to the gym, drinking water, or working on your artwork, these are all really good examples of personal goals, but how do you know if something should be a SMART goal or not? Really, the question here is, how do you decide the right scope for your SMART goals? And now we're going to switch gears again here just to start thinking about our job roles. SMART goals are meant to address all of your major job responsibilities. Remember, goals are intended to focus attention and resources on what is most important so that you can be successful in achieving your priorities. SMART goals are goals for day-to-day jobs, and some common types of goals are to maybe increase something, or to make something, or improve something, or reduce something, save something, develop someone, maybe yourself. So where should you start when crafting your SMART goals? And in uncommon fashion, I'm just going to read this slide word for word because it's all very helpful. Number 1, start by thinking about your whole job and the broad areas or buckets of responsibility and results for which you are accountable. Develop a goal statement for each bucket. To get the scope right, remember to focus on end results, not just individual tasks. Goals should be high level enough to encompass the core outcomes for which you are responsible, but specific and clear enough so you will be able to measure that success. Goals should be ongoing job responsibilities and any new projects, assignments, priorities, or initiatives that are specific to this performance cycle. Also, having too many goals can be an indicator that your goals are scoped at too low a level and are focused more on tasks than on actual end results. If it seems that your goals are becoming a little bit too numerous and task-oriented, it can be really helpful to consider combining several goal statements into a broader outcome area. So now we've learned a bit about SMART goals. Let's actually look at how to write one. So, when setting a goal, be specific about what you want to accomplish. Think about this as the mission statement for your goal. This isn't a detailed list of how you're going to meet a goal, but it should include an answer to the popular 5W questions. Who? Consider who needs to be involved in order for you to achieve this goal. This is especially important when you're working on group projects. What? Think about exactly what you are trying to accomplish and don't be afraid to get very detailed. Determine any related obstacles or requirements. And this question can also be beneficial in deciding if your goal is realistic. For example, if the goal is to open a baking business, but you've never baked anything in your life, that might be an issue. As a result, you might refine the specifics of the goal to be learn how to bake in order to open a baking business. When? You'll get more specific about this question under the time-bound section of defining SMART goals, but you should at least set some sort of time frame. Where? This question may not always apply, especially if you're setting personal goals, but if there's a location or a relevant event, this is a good spot to identify that. And then why? Why is this goal important to you? Why is this goal important to the team or the organization at large? When it comes to using this method for employees, the answer will likely be along the lines of company advancement or potentially even career development. Now, when setting out to write this mission statement for your goal, it can be also a little bit helpful to look at some of these action verbs from the Bloom's taxonomy. Note that this list does not include verbs like improve or reduce or increase. In other words, improve customer service or reduce cost. These imply that the direction that you want a result to move in, but don't do much to explain the role or specific action that you will take to accomplish this change. Now let's break down measurable. What metrics are you going to use to determine if you met your goal? This makes a goal so much more tangible because it provides a way to measure progress. If it's a project that's going to take a few months to complete, then set some milestones by considering specific tasks that you want to accomplish. Milestones are a series of steps along the way that would sort of, when added up, will result in the completion of whatever your main goal is. As the M in SMART goals states, there should be a source of information to measure or determine whether a goal has been achieved. The measurement should be a direct or possibly sometimes indirect indicator of what success for a particular goal will look like. Sometimes measurement is difficult, and managers and employees will need to work together to identify what the most relevant and feasible data sources and collection methods would likely be. And then from there, we can talk about data collection and data collection efforts that are needed to measure a goal. And it's important to include those in the goal's action plan. And even if a perfect direct measurement source is not sort of immediately feasible for a given goal, the discussion about the desired end result and why this goal is important and what the measurement options are, sort of what success might look like, are really important and sort of a valuable part of performance planning in general. This is a table of some of the typical types of data and data collection methods that are used to establish measurable SMART goals. You can have quality and accuracy rates. So for example, a UX or UI designer sort of monitors the success rate of users completing a task on a website so that you can ensure that the interface is intuitive. And you might collect that via automated reports from analytics tools like Google Analytics or heat maps that show user behavior. Another one might be sort of the amounts produced. So an example of a graphic designer might track the number of social media templates that were created in a week for a client campaign. And perhaps you collect those through audits and tests that evaluate the consistency and adherence to brand guidelines. You could measure revenue generated. So a web developer measures the increase in e-commerce sales after implementing a faster website design. And you might collect that through surveys conducted with customers and users to understand their purchasing experience. You can also look at productivity rates. So a copywriter might review the number of ad scripts written and approved within a specific time frame. And that might be collected through work products, samples reviewed against project timelines and quality standards. Customer satisfaction's a great one, probably the most commonly used other than things like quality and the number produced. So a photographer might evaluate client feedback to determine if the images that they delivered met or exceeded expectations for the client. You can collect that through other documents like client testimonials and reviews or satisfaction forms. Each combination helps us as professionals assess and improve our processes and outputs in our respective roles much, much more effectively. All right, Achievable focuses on how important a goal is to you and what you can do to make it attainable and may require even developing some new skills. And honestly, one of the ones that I had to learn about myself was changing attitudes. It can be easy to get stuck in your way of doing things. So this goal is meant to inspire motivation, not discouragement. So some things that you can think about when writing this goal is to start with the obvious. How do you plan to accomplish this goal? Then you can sort of assess if you have the tools and the skills that are needed to complete the goal. Talked about that a little bit. And if you don't have the tools or the skills necessary to complete the goal, what would it take for you to attain them? Do you need to gain a new skill? Do you need money to purchase a tool or a software? Do you need mentorship? The list can sort of go on here for a while, so there's really no matrix for this like there were for the specific and measurable example. But I think you get the idea. Relevance refers to focusing on something that makes sense with the broader business goals. For example, if the goal is to launch a new program or service, it should be something that is in alignment with the overall business or department objectives. Your team might be able to launch a new program, but if your division is not prioritizing launching that type or those types of new programs, then the goal really wouldn't be relevant. You would kind of be off on your own crusade there. And lastly, anyone can set goals, but if it lacks realistic timing, chances are you are not going to succeed. Providing a target date for deliverables is really, really imperative. So you can ask specific questions about the goal deadline and what can be accomplished within that time period. If the goal will take 3 months to complete, it's useful to define what should be achieved maybe halfway through the process or a quarter of the way through the process. And providing time constraints also creates a little bit more of a sense of urgency too. When it comes to writing SMART goals, ask yourself and other team members a lot of questions. The answers will help fine-tune your strategy, and ensuring the goals are something that's actually attainable. So for the lab after this lecture, you're going to get a template that you can use as a guide. This doesn't have to be a daunting experience. In fact, hopefully it's quite illuminating. That's it for today. Enjoy the lab, and we'll see you back for lecture 4.2.